Now, when there was a attorney I was talking to earlier. She came to me for her SEO, and she said that I want to switch from refugee law to business immigration. And I asked her why, and she said, I'm not making any money because of the situation in Canada. So then I learned that she was handling everything. She was going through administrative tasks, she was billing clients, she was missing deadlines, and she told me that I don't even get time to spend with my children. And that's the problem. When I dug into the situation, I learned that she never wanted to let go of all the control of her firm. Because when I asked her why, and she said, I don't think so that my employees can do a better job than me.
If hypothetically I knew someone who was very wealthy and had a child that they wanted to sponsor in a business, I would recommend to that parent that rather than give the child seed money of let's say $100,000, just here you go, start your business. I would recommend instead that the parent little by little support the child with personal care expenses like rent, let's say, and force the child to generate revenue with the business in order to cause the business to continue. And the reason is that I don't think money always makes a business work.
Initially, when you're building the contracts or the privacy or terms of use, you've said that if your first call to a lawyer after you've been sued, you're already playing defense. Now, imagine a scenario: I am a bootstrapped founder. I don't have that kind of money. What should I do to hire somebody like you to make myself protected?
Ideally, you would have hired someone like me long before you ever got sued, because hiring an attorney is like insurance. It's not a expense that anybody wants to spend, right? It's something that feels like an out-of-pocket cost.
So today's guest is a very special guest. Initially, I went onto her website and saw the first headline that said, "Your business, your livelihood, our passion." So instead of writing, "I'm the best lawyer in Miami or Florida," that's something was very, very interesting, because not a lot of lawyers do that. So basically, I have invited Jane Muir. She's the managing shareholder of J. Muir and Associates, a multi-award-winning firm in Coral Gables. Beyond her success in complex commercial litigation, Jane has served as the president of both Coral Gables and Miami-Dade Bar Associations. Most impressively, she is frequently appointed by the courts as the receiver, which is something very, very important. So, welcome to the show, Jane.
Thanks, Awais. Thanks for having me.
So, I would start off with in the area where I work. So, I help legal tech startups with writing their code. And you've talked about this before as well, but they might have different directions in terms of funding. Some are looking for seed funding and some bootstrap. So, what are the things to look for in these two different conditions?
Great question. Well, I'm a bootstrapper myself, and so I do sort of favor bootstrapping. And the reason is, I have two reasons. The first is, I think that testing your concept with limited resources makes the concept stronger. And so, for example, if hypothetically I knew someone who was very wealthy and had a child that they wanted to sponsor in a business, I would recommend to that parent that rather than give the child seed money of let's say $100,000, just here you go, start your business. I would recommend instead that the parent little by little support the child with personal care expenses like rent, let's say, and force the child to generate revenue with the business in order to cause the business to continue. And the reason is that I don't think money always makes a business work. Sometimes it is just prolonging inevitable business failure. So I started my firm with no clients and really no experience. And I had to learn how to run a firm and be a lawyer at the same time, because my story is I graduated from law school during the market crisis of 2008. My graduation date was 2009. And I did have job opportunities, but the one that I ended up taking, I was laid off after only 6 months. And then the other ones that I didn't take wouldn't become available for another year, because after I had not taken them, they had been occupied and they wouldn't become available until later. So I had no choice really but to start a firm. And my law partner from law school, my trial partner, had also been laid off. So we started a firm together, and we just little by little got cases and worked on them as diligently as possible, and established our reputation that way. And what I like about the bootstrapping experience also is that in the end, when you succeed, you know it's your legitimate success that you've created. And the other benefit is you don't have to give away any equity. If you have bootstrapped, you own the whole thing. Like a good example of this is Spanx. And the founder of Spanx, she made everything herself with her own savings and investment. And in the end, the success was all hers, and she sold the company for over $1 billion. But if she had taken investment, or angels as they are called, early on, then at the end she could have been diluted to the point of not really having any benefit. So then to address the investor option, when people have great ideas, a lot of investors are willing to throw money at them. Like StubHub is another example that I always bring up. And the idea of reselling tickets on a marketplace is a fantastic idea. eBay for tickets to concerts. What a good idea. That founder invited investment, and eventually his company was part of an IPO, which was fabulously successful, and the company had many billions of dollars of valuation. But he had taken on investors so early that his diluted ownership interest was only worth like $30,000 at the IPO. So those are the reasons why I lean towards bootstrapping up my own experience and bias, but also in the end, the risk that you could be diluted out of the benefit of your great idea.
Yeah, I completely agree with your point of view, because obviously when you're running a business, you have a great idea, and obviously you don't know exactly where it's going to lead you, but that at the end, the responsibility is on you to drive the success. But keeping up with that, and you have been into the trenches of starting something which was bootstrap. I have, let's suppose today I start an AI legal tech company, right? So I have a great idea. I am using AI. Now, a lot of debate has been going on whether when one firm uses your legal tech tool and sort of your AI that you built in hallucinates or does something wrong and you get sued because of it. Or sometimes it's a debate that obviously the law firm holds the responsibility. Initially, when you're building the contracts or the privacy or terms of use, you've said that if you're first called to a lawyer after you've been sued, you're already playing defense. Now, imagine a scenario: I am a bootstrapped founder. I don't have that kind of money. What should I do to hire somebody like you to make myself protected?
Great question. Well, first of all, ideally, you would have hired someone like me long before you ever got sued, because hiring an attorney is like insurance. It's not a expense that anybody wants to spend, right? It's something that feels like an out-of-pocket cost. And we'd much rather spend on marketing or on staff or on something where we feel the benefit right away. But if you consult a lawyer early in your company's life, then what they should do, especially in the setting of AI or any media type of business, a software as a service type of business, you need to have terms of use for your service or your software that include specific detailed limitations on your liability. And for instance, if you open Facebook or any major website and you just take the time to read their terms of use, what you'll find is that they typically have language that says, you cannot sue us. Nothing that we do is going to lead to any liability, and our liability cannot include consequential damages and there'll be numerous descriptions of the types of damages that they cannot be held responsible for. And then it'll say, in any event, if we are somehow liable, in spite of all these reasons why we can never be, then our liability shall be limited to the total amount that was paid by the user, or $100, whichever is less. So by having that kind of language in your terms of use, it basically establishes a floor that is so low for the potential upside on somebody's lawsuit that no lawyer would take on a case against you. So you have to just bite the bullet, spend $3,000 or $5,000 on a lawyer to create these agreements. In the technology field, the click wrap agreement is what they call it, is incredibly powerful and can save you. And like I always tell people this interesting little history about that, which is in the olden days, probably before you were born, when we had software for a computer, we had disks that you would load into the computer one at a time to get the software off the disks and onto the computer. And the disks were wrapped in plastic, and you had to open the wrapping to get the disks out. And on the wrapping was a sticker, and the sticker said, if you break this seal, then you agree to our terms of use. And inside the package would be a tiny little folded up piece of paper that if you unfolded it, it was like this big and writing so small you could not even read it. And it had the detailed licensing agreement that said you can only use this software for this computer. You can't use it for multiple computers. You're going to have to buy multiple packages for every computer. And every package was hundreds of dollars. So people wanted to use and recycle those disks all the time. But the courts decided that that was a valid contract, that breaking the seal, you can agree. And that continues to this day, where whenever you get a new iPhone, you scroll down and click agree. And I mean, your iPhone could literally explode in your face and cause you severe burns and disfigurement. And you would have hardly any recourse against Apple because of their aggressive terms of use. So we want to make sure at the very beginning, like, allocate your resources in percentages. Like, there's a book I recommend called Profit First, where they explain how to manage your cash flow, and just set aside 10% towards administration. You need bookkeeping and you need legal. And the bookkeeping will help you show potential investors that you have something of value to invest in. And the legal will make sure that somebody can't take away what you created. So that's my advice. Just start early. It's not that much money as long as you do it before you get sued.
Right. Now, this brings us to another question here. And that is, obviously, on the user side, it's like very, very disadvantageous when using these softwares, because obviously the terms of use are very, very long. In fact, if I talk about myself, a lot of softwares I use, I just click I agree and I just sign up. But the problem is that since AI is here, we can skim through the terms of use very quickly, right? So why is it important for the clients, whether they are on the service provider side or the user side, to be very knowledgeable about the facts of what they're going to use and how it's going to alter the process in the long term? So what are the tools or databases we can use to learn before we go to a lawyer like you?
Oh, that's a tough one. I really think it's all needs-based knowledge. And I would say that there are books that I can recommend. I love reading. And I think that everybody should read Built to Last and Good to Great by Jim Collins. The E-Myth by Michael Gerber is one of my top business books. And all the books by Michael Michalowicz, starting with Profit First, are outstanding. And then, I mean, I could go on and on. But if you want to focus on the legal issues of what to know, honestly, I don't see a lot of utility in investing your time as a technician. Like, if you're a developer, why bother learning law? It takes a 4-year degree, another 3-year degree, 5 years worth of 40-hour weeks is what gets you to the 10,000 hour mark, which is why I think a lot of people think lawyers don't really begin to ripen until they're 5 years out. You're not going to be able to catch up. It's just impossible. So what you really need is find a counselor who matches your ethos and your values and has a good reputation and solid knowledge in your area of expertise, and rely on their advice. You know, be an educated consumer, to be sure, but you're just going to have to trust and take advice from the people that have the expertise. And it's hard fought. Like, my expertise, now that I've been practicing almost 17 years, and I don't see how I could have possibly earned the knowledge and skills that I have today without the struggles. And I mean, even occasions when I had business troubles of my own. and I made mistakes and learned from them. Like, just experience is the best educator. And I think a lot of engineers especially really desire to control the variables, right? And they want to have everything be orderly, and they're so smart and they understand so much, and they're very capable. It's just like, you could absolutely become a very educated consumer, borderline a lawyer. Like, go to law school if you're interested in it. But the utility, I don't think, is there. So I would say focus on what your expertise is and surround yourself with people better at other expertise than you.
Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned Good to Great. It's actually one of my favorite books as well. And we're going to get into how you made your firm from good to great. But the thing is that initially when I started my own firm, I was not an avid reader myself. And I had to learn that hard way by making so many mistakes. So I remember that I had to go through so many books after that to learn the basics of business and economics. So considering that, let's suppose we'll start with starting a law firm, right? Like, you started your law firm without actually gaining a lot of experience working in a big firm. Suppose I am a lawyer, I want to start now. What do you think is business education, is how important it is before you actually begin, registering for your law firm?
Well, I don't have a formal business education, and so I don't know if I would have been better off with that education. My experience was, I started having read a book by Jay Foonberg called How to Start and Build Your Law Practice. And it's very basic advice. Like, first, you're going to need an address and a phone number and a fax. And at that point, they had domains and everything. So you want your own domain, because and he explains it's more professional if you have your own domain. You don't want to write from bellsouth.com or anything like that. It was so simple. And then he said, next, what you do is you make a postcard and you write a note to all of your friends and say that I've opened a law firm and please let me know if you have any work. And that was pretty much the advice. It's a big book and it has more advice than that. But essentially, it was a step-by-step of how to become a practicing attorney with your own practice, doing work for clients, and less about running a law firm with more than one lawyer. So I'd say it took me a decade of just being a lawyer and making not very much money before I started to learn the business of the law, because I didn't feel confident really to take on matters that were beyond my understanding or beyond my comfort zone. So I was taking smaller matters, not involving a lot of money and controversy, and a variety of matters. I had litigations, I had transactions, I handled all kinds of weird things. Once I had to recover a Persian rug from a tenant that was valuable to the owner. I recovered a horse once. And people would send me puzzling legal matters that weren't typical, and I would have to sort it out. And I think it's what made me a good lawyer, because once you're comfortable with the puzzles, it's any puzzle, it doesn't matter how complicated, put in front of you, you just have a better understanding that I don't need to know the answer right now. I just need to know where to look to find the answer, or who to ask to find the answer. So it started like very basic, me, my laptop, working, and gradually I got more familiar with the business of law, which I think what was the most valuable skill I learned is bookkeeping. And I didn't have a clue about that when I started the firm. For instance, every time you spend money, you need to take the receipt and enter it into the system and make sure that receipt is added to the client's bill so that you don't pay the expense. The client pays it when they get their bill. That took me 5 years to sort out. And I ended up spending thousands of dollars on client expenses that I had not figured out how to pass through to the client. So I always tell people bookkeeping is your most important thing. As to more formal education, I would say that now what I've been doing is I've found groups that are specialty to lawyers and law firm owners, where they do meetings in which everybody shares a challenge that they're facing, and the group takes turns commenting on their advice for your challenge. And doing those mastermind groups has been tremendous for me because, for one, it's increased my confidence, where I see other people who are at higher revenue points than my own suffering from challenges I've solved, or challenges that people who are sort of beginner that I know how to fix, and everybody is really the same, and we're all able to contribute to improving each other's goals and accomplishments just by sharing. So I think that's the most formal business education that I've encountered that has been incredibly helpful. But I know that some lawyers have JD MBAs, and I can imagine it must be very valuable. I think the MBA really focuses on management of a major corporation more than entrepreneurship. So, to be honest, I don't see much of a benefit.
Yeah. And like you said, ultimately it's the experience that matters. And unless you don't go into the trenches, you never get that, grounded experience from the start. Now, when, there was a attorney I was talking to earlier, she came to me for her SEO. And she said that I want to switch from refugee law to business immigration. And I asked her why, and she said, I'm not making any money because of the situation in Canada. So then I learned that she was handling everything. She was going through administrative tasks, she was billing clients, she was missing deadlines, and she told me that I don't even get time to spend with my children. And that's the problem. When I dug into the situation, I learned that she never wanted to let go of all the control of her firm. Because when I asked her why, and she said, I don't think so that my employees can do a better job than me. I was like, okay, well, then even SEO cannot help you, because you will be then dealing with the leads and then calling them and then emailing them, and so many things come after that. So in fact, I recommended her book, which it's called Buy Back Your Time by Dan
great.
Mitchell. Yeah.
Great advice.
But why do you think initially lawyers have this issue where they feel like that if they can delegate something to others who can, like you said, can do a much better job because that's their job? Why do you think they're afraid of doing all this?
I think that, for one, we all have to take the MPRE exam, and the rules of professional conduct are strict, and we're all terrified of being disbarred. Like I literally thought the bar would come and take my license away if I did anything incorrectly. And I was constantly terrified when I first started the firm.
Huh.
But once you know how to do something, it's important to explain it in a procedure and then give the procedure to someone who can do it. And that's the lesson that comes out of the E-Myth, for instance, by Michael Gerber. You will only have a job you own if you make yourself indispensable. And in order to remove yourself from the job so that you become a real business owner, you have to explain and define how every piece of the job is achieved. I think aside from the terror of, professional conduct or malpractice risk, there's an element of ego where we feel that nobody is as good as I am. I mean, that lady said this to you. Nobody is, and mind you, I can put a stamp on a letter. Oh, it will be so perfectly aligned. It will definitely stick to the letter envelope. But why would I do something that a teenager could do and should do? And by the way, the courts, if you were seeking to recover your fees, they will not grant legal fees to someone for doing activities that are clerical like that. So if the courts won't give you legal fees, why would you take on the task? It's not rational. It's emotional. So I'd say fear, ego, and the last thing is just lack of understanding of procedure. Like, we all get trained on law and we read law, and so we know a contract is formed by offer, acceptance, consideration, no defenses, and the defenses are fraud, mistake, duress. We have to memorize all this hard law. But never, even I took accounting for lawyers in law school, and I know that in some law schools they have a class about starting a firm, and I've spoken for classes like that. But they don't necessarily explain what the role of a file clerk is, and what the role of a secretary or a receptionist, and how to explain to someone what you want from them in those roles, and why to do it. And so the way I would say it to your friend, for instance, is if you want to help more people, you need to be constantly focused on doing tasks that only you are capable of. And that's the legal stuff, the going to court. Other people can put the stamps on the envelopes. They can answer the phone. They can do all kinds of things in the office. But only you can go to court. Only you can set the strategy for the case. Only you can do heavy legal research and writing. And you need to do the things that only you are capable of.
Yeah, exactly. And then actually it also comes down to the systems that you create. And in my office, I initially struggled with explaining the core functions of a certain task. And what I did was, I think back in the day, I was not using AI a lot. So I wrote it down and I said, okay, step one is, this is what the step one is going to be. Then you go to step two. And then everything started working. Now, in this age today, I see a lot of companies, they say, okay, we're going to fix your workflow. And even my company does that we glue together SaaS models and we try to build the workflow. But then how important is for a firm to be sure what exactly is their workflow? Because no tool can help you, no AI can help you if you do not know what are the steps you got to take. So how have you implemented such systems, which now even if you can automate, it's very easy for a consultant to understand and make that implementation?
Oh, it's been very challenging, to be honest. I really had to twist and bend because I'm a learner. I'm very good at learning and retaining information. But when it comes to teaching, I am not very good. So I had to dedicate intense, concentrated hours to listing, explaining. I started by outlining, and then a friend explained to me how to create a decision tree, which I started to use an app called Glyphy to make, so that I would say, if this, then that. So example being intake for the firm. We receive clients from different sources, from personal referrals, professional referrals, Google random people who search for a business lawyer in Miami, the Florida Bar's Lawyer Referral Service, which is operated by the Miami-Dade Bar, and I would add like Thumbtack or Facebook ads, LinkedIn ads, different channels, but we sort of batch all those different channels into the internet intake section. So once you have the top of the funnel, I had to explain the diagram goes into this calendar scheduling app, and that app connects to our billing software so that we can have the contact information people have entered. And I had to think about it, write it down, turn it into a decision tree manually. And now there's AI for this, which is amazing. All the shortcuts that we can take, because you don't have to physically think, what happens if this and that, because you can just dump it into the AI and it will generate a beautiful decision tree. It's phenomenal.
Yes, exactly. And you specialize in protecting what, people value the most. In modern litigation, the value is often the data, because like you said, you need to know how many people are coming from the referrals from the bar or Google or LinkedIn. And that's how you make informed decisions ultimately. So if a firm's intake through retainer process is still manual today in 2026, what are the risks that possess? It could be data leakage or human error, and what it can lead your firm to.
Well, that's a tough question. I'd say it depends, which is the famous lawyer answer. If a firm is only taking a very few clients, let's say you have a specialty that is so niche that you get 4 clients a year, in that event, you can handle a manual process, or even 12 clients a year, or even 20 clients a year, you can have a manual process. But if you're having consultations 10, 20 times a week, that's where the breakdowns occur. And they are, first of all, you'll waste your money because you don't know where the clients are coming from, and therefore you don't know where to allocate your resources to get more clients from that source. Like it could, I don't know, Bing. Hardly anyone, most everybody uses Google, but Bing or one of these other unusual search engines could be generating you a ton of clients, but you don't know to dedicate more resources to those ads because you don't know where the clients are coming from. I would say there's a serious risk of missing out on revenue because if you have a consult and you don't follow up on a regular basis, the person may never hire you after they wanted to hire you. So I've read, for instance, a book called Hyper Sales Growth that says that the average sale takes 7 touches. So if you get a call, they say, I'd like to consult with you, Awais. You say, okay, I'll set you for Tuesday at 4 p.m. If that person doesn't get a reminder with the link to the Zoom where you're going to meet and a form to fill out with their name and address and phone number, they disappear. And Tuesday comes and goes, and you never had the consult, and you've lost that prospect. So I'd say loss of revenue, and then there's, of course, the risk that you didn't get formal signatures on your engagement. For instance, we had a case where it was a condominium, and fortunately we have in our intake process a fee agreement that has a conflict waiver, and the conflict waiver defines that every member of the board understands that our representation is not of them personally, it is of the association as an entity. And they acknowledge and confirm that they understand we are not their personal counsel. Signed. So later on, there was a conflict with an attempted recall, and a receiver was installed to take over the association. And the people who were challenging the board claimed that we were representing them. And I was able to point to the fee agreement and say, notice that we have signatures acknowledging that we represent the association, not these individuals. And that confirmed that everything we had done was proper and that we were allowed to proceed. So having that automation confirms that you will make sure things don't slip through the cracks, that you meet all the compliance needs of the law and of the legal profession and our professional conduct requirements, and make sure that you conserve resources and you generate revenue.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one of those things which I hear a lot, once you start getting a lot of inbound leads on your website, most of the firms who are scaling have an issue where they get a lot of junk leads. So they have to filter out, right? And a lot of people understand that, okay, I am going to call this firm, but maybe my opposing party was already somebody who was a client, so they don't know, and then you have to keep on filtering. Have you found a solution that is so robust that we can, tell my audience that how to solve this big issue of filtering out the leads that you don't want to work with?
I don't know that I have, honestly. We have 2 wonderful staff people who answer our phones, and one is responsible to take all calls, and then he sends the matters that are new to the other, who listens to their problem and helps determine whether it's our kind of matter or not. And so we are still handling that manually, but that is okay with us because our kinds of matters are not volume. So we only have 100 clients at a time, and that's for a firm of 5 lawyers. So we don't need, it's not like we're handling 500 cases per lawyer, which in a situation like an immigration firm would not be unusual. Because their fees are flat and they're like $5,000. So you've got to have a lot of matters running at the same time. And our matters, our average fees are $70,000 for litigation, with the typical case that goes to trial having at least $200,000 in fees. So we're not forced to make our system as automated and precise as a lot of practices like bankruptcy or consumer practices would.
Right. So that reminds me of one law firm that we work with. They were looking for all sorts of AI because initially what SaaS companies do is they grab your attention with a low fee and then they keep on increasing. For example, I'd be very open about Smith AI. They're very easy to jump in, but then when you start getting the bill of using it, or even Intaker, you want to probably hide the AI. So in fact, the thing is that we built a small conditional based form, and that could help them. So one guy, I remember, he said, I get a lot of leads, and when he implemented the form, because that form wouldn't let them fill the form and go to the thank you page, which is important for telling Google or Meta that, okay, this is not a qualified lead. So their bill of the advertisement on the digital space was drastically reduced. So he was like, I didn't know that you could build a customized form for so cheap. And I said, yeah, but because you don't consult enough, like you're a lawyer, if I have a problem, I get into a car accident, probably I'll call you up. But you have a problem, but you're a great advisor, but you never want to get a good advice from a tech guy. So why is it that lawyers think, or they shy away from getting advice themselves when they understand the value of advice?
Well, I think that all depends on the lawyer, and I think it all depends on the advice. Generally, I find lawyers to be pretty open to advice because at least litigators, we are forced to work with experts all the time. And so I think that we're more inclined towards seeking out expertise. But I think it needs to come from recommendations. Like lawyers are constantly bombarded with solicitations, and they come from just at random. Like today, I was solicited for someone who wanted to clean our offices, and I marked as spam. It's just a constant barrage because the business community looks at lawyers as a source of potential money and premium fees. So I think testimonials are key. So if someone is serving the legal community, they should, as best as they can, get lawyers to make videos and say, I used Awais for my SEO and he did an incredible job. I went from 3 calls a day to 300, and now we can't even keep up, and he's so great. If you get those kinds of testimonials or personal introductions, then that's, I think, the best way to reach a lawyer and cut through all the spammy solicitations we get.
Yeah. The noise. Right.
Yes. But to your point, it's just like any other doctors, engineers, people who are high achievers. They just think they're smarter than the rest of us. And so it's hard to persuade them that your advice is good. And when I have to consult those types of personalities, I show them the source material. And so I'll say, well, my advice is XYZ, and here's why. Here's the statute. Here are the statistics. The Small Business Administration says, and I prove it to them, and I don't it doesn't bother me that I have to prove it to them. I don't think, how dare this person question my knowledge after 17 years of practice. I think, well, my skincare must really be working because they think that I'm not an experienced lawyer. So let me prove it. And I think that there's nothing wrong with that. And it makes you better at your craft to be able to explain things.
Yeah. The second thing that I want to ask you is that you are a business litigator, right? Now, why aren't you doing family law or PI at the same time? Is it a good way? Isn't it a good way to scale the firm? Maybe get so many other clients. Why aren't you specific to a single niche?
Well, there's a saying: the riches are in the niches. Yeah. And when we spread thin, what we're doing is we're forcing ourselves to add more processes to our firm. And it's superior to have fewer processes that you are incredibly good at. Like, there's a book about this called Built to Sell, and it explains in an allegorical way, in a story, how this marketing agency, they did various types of marketing. They did graphic design, and they did logo design, and they did advertising and brochures, and the owner was exhausted all the time and wasn't profitable. And so he spoke with a mentor and said, well, what do you think I should do? And the mentor gave him one task to do at a time. And the chapters progressed to teach you how to do these same tasks. And it started with assessing the profitability of all these activities. And what they recognized was that each activity took a certain number of personnel hours and had a certain amount of revenue generated. And with the supplies and everything in the office space, they were able to calculate the margins of profit on all these activities. In that book, the development was that they were great at making logos, and they could charge a flat fee for making the logos, and they would have happy clients. And so even though it was terrifying, this owner cut all these other areas of his business and gave them away. And in response, he was referred business from the people that he had given away pieces of his clientele. And for lawyers, I think it's key to be in a niche, because if you're not, no one will refer you work, because they will think, well, I better not send Jane this contract because she's going to take their future divorce, and I'm a family lawyer. No family lawyer has any worry about sending me work, because I will never handle a divorce case. And that goes for a lot of areas. So it's better to be a mile deep than a mile wide. And the riches are in the niches, and it is terrifying. Like, when I started, they call it door law. When anything that walks in the door, you will take. But it's not profitable, and it's not practical, because you're having to manage too many processes with too many variables unless you have your niche defined.
Yes, exactly. This is why, if you go to Jane's YouTube, you'll find so much value in the YouTube channel. And she's just giving you pure advice on a lot of stuff, how to, make an LLC, how to choose between an S Corp and C Corp, what's the difference. So obviously within the niche, you can actually build that marketing funnel, and you can talk to your ideal customers who are there. Instead of, if Jane was putting one video about family law or divorce matter and then one video about business matter, that would be very, very difficult for her to establish that authority. Now, in today's time, Jane, you have a big firm. You're doing so great. You have hundreds of clients who are coming in through different referrals. Why is it so important for you to go on LinkedIn, make those videos every single day? What is basically the driver behind that?
Well, you can't stand still. If you don't grow, you die. And my practice requires always additional clients to be joining our firm, because in litigation, you finish the litigation and it's over, and you say thank you and goodbye, and you send them a bottle of champagne. So if you don't have that flow of clients concluding and clients beginning, then you won't be able to pay the bills. And I sincerely, like, my goal is to have a practice in which my own effort is focused on things that I feel are my best skills. And that's speaking and writing and presenting persuasive arguments. So in order to always be at my best, I have to practice, and making those videos is good practice for me, explaining things or persuading people. And it also shows people who I am. And I'm looking for clients who have the same values that I have. They want to achieve excellence, and they want to have a impact in the world that is positive, and they want to do that while also building a great life and income for themselves and their families. And that's, I think, to explain that and to show people what your approach is, what your values are. It's important, because a consumer is going to, look up or ask a friend, or maybe ask their spouse, like, I need a lawyer. Will you look this up for me and find me someone? And people, when they see a video, it's almost as good as meeting you. And they look at, like, there've been studies where they'll look at photographs and be able to show character traits, level of socioeconomic status, education, all from a second of seeing a picture. So imagine if you have a video and you're explaining yourself, and your facial expressions, your hand gestures, your attire, it all communicates important messages that allow someone to decide that this is my lawyer, this is who I want to work with.
Yes, exactly. And this is what I tell everybody, whether they're in law or tech space, or, selling anything, like you said, cleaning services. I think sending massive emails or calling or whatever you do, it's just going to land you in spam. But over time, if you build videos, you're basically providing free value to people. People would not actually do it on their own. They would consult you, because they see you as a authoritative figure who understands what you exactly do. So on that note, Jane, it has been a pleasure having you and talking to you. Do you have any thing to say in the end that could really help my audience?
Keep going. Even when things look bleak, you can do it. There's a Japanese parable that get knocked down 6 times, stand up 7, I want to say. And you just have to keep going. Even when you feel defeated, just keep at it, do your best, and look back on your achievements in the past, and remember how far you've come. And that will always encourage you so that you will eventually achieve success.
That's such a great thing to say. Thank you so much, Jane, for joining in today. And I hope to talk to you again, because with your knowledge, one podcast doesn't justify all that.
You're so
Thank
kind.
you.